can always do so in the chat as long as, and if you're in the chat, you'll notice that it will tell you whether you're asking it directly to the panelists and attendees, or which is everyone, or just to the panelists. So feel free to make your chat, your questions there, go to panelists and attendees. And if you would like to, once we get to questions that you kind of, you need to hold up your embroidery and point to something, be like, what is this? Then just put that into the chat. Let us know that you'd like to be on video, and we will make you a panelist able to, or to share your video, or if you just want to ask your question in, voice, but no video, then you can raise your hand. There's that little reaction button at the bottom of your screen. It says raise hand, and we'll give you a prompt to unmute yourself. So, okay, it looks like we're having a little trouble getting our Facebook Live started, but that's all right. And let's see, we are recording, so we'll broadcast this via the YouTube and the Facebooks later. But I'm just so excited that you're all here. We'll get going, and I will turn it over to Jen.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and apologies in advance for our learning curve, but we're really excited to do this, and you guys are our test subjects for this first one. But I'd really like to thank our staff for making this craft kit possible. It was a long effort, and so excited to have you guys sew along with us. And then also thanks to our members of 108 and our sponsors for making 108 the best. This embroidery kit obviously is based off of one of our exhibitions, Facets, by Jonathan Hils. Sadly, it's no longer in the gallery, but we have a great new show coming. But you can see the virtual tour on our YouTube channel. But this is based off one of his pieces. He uses 3D printing and CNC machine technologies to create larger than life sculpture work. And yeah, you can check it out on our Facebook. So let's get started. I'm going to pin my hand view so you can see my kit here. Yay, there's the kit. So beautiful. So you can start by opening the kit, and we'll talk about all the things that are in it, and then we'll go through step by step. So first, you've got your instruction booklet, and you can save that for later since we're going to go through everything together. And then also in the kit is your needle threader, this little seam ripper, which inside of that also has your needles. So we'll go ahead and take those out because we're definitely going to need those. And then your pattern, the felt backing, your fabric, the embroidery floss on this lovely little card, and your hoop. So the first step is to transfer your pattern onto your fabric. So you'll open up your fabric, and then you can take the paper pattern and slide it behind. And then you just take a pencil and holding down the fabric, just lightly trace over the pattern. And it doesn't have to be super neat because you will be sewing over the lines, so they don't have to be exact. And I think for the purpose of this, I'm just going to do a few of these little boxes so we can get moved on in enough time. All right. So you'll obviously go all the way around, but I'm just going to leave it at about half. The next step is to open your hoop. So there's like a little nut right there. You'll hold that and then unscrew the top and remove the inside portion. You can set the side with the hardware off to the side and slide the inside ring of the hoop under the pattern.
Jen, I'll go ahead and ask a question that when I was first learning to embroider, I didn't know. Do you typically worry about washing your, if you're doing a hoop to then hang up, do you pre-wash your fabric or iron it or anything?
Sometimes I would iron it, but the great thing about leaving it on the hoop is it's going to be tight in the hoop and you can tighten it up really well. So you typically aren't going to see those creases. Like even after I slide this on and tighten it up, those will kind of fade away. But if you want it to be super crisp and clean, you can definitely iron it beforehand.
Got
it. And then you'll start tightening. Doesn't have to be perfect when you start tightening. You just want to get it a little bit tight so that way you can pull the fabric with it already tight. Okay, once it feels pretty snug, you'll just grab this excess fabric on the back and just pull a little bit all the way around the hoop. And it tightens. There you go. And then I like to tighten it just a little bit more after that. Typically, you can get it a little bit tighter. Anybody have any questions so far? You can raise the hand icon. All right, let's move on to separating the floss. I have the berry colored kit, which is really pretty. So you can start with whatever color you want. I'm going to start with this color right here. So you just slide that off and find the end. And then get a length that you feel like you can manage, that's enough that you can keep going, but not too much that you wouldn't be able to pull it all the way through. Typically, I go with like an arm's length from the tips of my fingers to the middle of my chest. And then snip that off. All embroidery floss comes with 6 strands in one, which is great because then you get to decide the thickness. And we're going to half it anyway when we put it in the needle, so it'll be thicker than what you originally pick. I like to do 2 or 3. If you're really trying to fill in an area and make the work go a little bit quicker, you can leave it thicker. and that helps to fill up your space a little bit more. So I'm going to go with 3, and you start separating it, and they're twisted together. So you'll want to keep it separated and let that end that's connected twist around. I also like to hook my thumb inside of it and kind of let one hang down and then just let it keep turning. If you try to just pull them apart, it will become a mess. So you have to let it kind of twist out. All right, and then you can set one half of that off to the side and you can use it later. Okay, and now we're going to thread the needle with our needle threader. These little tiny needles are so great to have the needle threader. So you'll put the needle threader in first in the eye of the needle, and then put the end of the thread in, and you can kind of just let that go. Pull the thread through the needle if it'll go. Might be a little thick. Nope, there we go. And then pull off the threader. And there you go. And then pull the needle to the middle, connect the ends, and time together. I do what's called like a fisherman's knot, where you make a loop and you can do a couple of loops, and then you put the end through and pull tight. And then trim off pretty close to the knot. And there we go. We're ready to go with our needle. This is the fun part, starting and deciding where you want to start, or which box you want to fill in. One of my favorite tricks to finding where you want to start, besides just like jabbing the needle into the fiber, if you tilt your needle on the back side of the fabric, so you're not just poking straight through, but you're tilting it and pressing it, you can kind of run the needle tip along and you can see it on the front. So you can get right in that perfect spot to come through. And you'll pull through and see there's your little knot on the back. We're going to start with the back stitch because it's pretty much the most basic stitch. And you get to decide how long you want the stitches to be. And again, that can kind of determine how quickly you can finish your project. If you make them very small, it'll take a little bit longer. And if you make them pretty wide, then it'll go quicker. So we'll make ours pretty wide so I can show you that. And pull through. If you get a little knot like that, what I typically do is just go under, and if you just pull back up, it'll kind of come apart. There we go. There's our first stitch. And then underneath, you'll want to come up away from that other stitch the same length. It doesn't have to be exactly the same length. It doesn't have to be perfect, but that's the general idea. And then instead of going forward, we go back and kind of put it into that same the end of that same stitch. So it creates kind of a connected line. And that's why they call it the back stitch, because on the front, you're always going in a backward direction. And drag your needle and come up using the pattern lines as your guide. Keep going back through. And there's our first line. Yay. So then you can turn very easily. Just instead of going somewhere over here, you'll just turn the corner there and just go back to that end.
So Jen, what do you do if you come up through, for whatever reason, you accidentally come up through a spot where you did not want to?
Yeah, I mean, that happens all the time. Sometimes maybe you get off your pattern line and you come up and you realize, oh, that's not great. What I do is I just try to go back through that same hole that you came out of. And typically that'll come right back out. And that little tiny hole that you made, if you just kind of scratch the surface of the fabric, it will, the little hole will come out. You can still see it just because of the red of the thread, but it will get filled in eventually. So that's fine. Or you can try to pull it from the back side. Try it again. Just go straight in the middle of that. On the back of the work, you just kind of pull up on that piece and you let that needle go. And then on the front, you can kind of push backwards through, back through that same hole. And then you just have to make sure you aren't tangled up. Uh-oh. A little bit of that thread. There we go.
Thank you. That is exactly what happens to me all the time. Especially as well as you demonstrate some of the more complicated.
And if all else fails, whenever, sometimes you'll get a big giant knot going on in the back of your work because something didn't get pulled through all the way, or it got stuck on one of these little end pieces and for whatever reason created a huge knot. Don't be afraid to just cut the whole thing off and pull it all out. That's why we give you this lovely seam ripper. It's great for mistakes.
And we do every kit or every color should have about half a skein of embroidery floss. So there should be plenty for
making mistakes.
Yeah.
Everyone's allowed to make mistakes. And this is your first project. If this is your first project, be gentle on yourself. Perfection is not the goal, I say. Allow yourself to be creative and use your judgment about your colors and what you want to add. Obviously, this is a pattern that's based off of that piece, but you can certainly do a lot with it in regards to, filling in the middle. If you just wanted to fill in the whole middle, or you can take your pencil and add more lines. and create your own pattern.
Yeah, I always think of like in Jane Austen novels, how embroidery, like tiny stitches, were a sign of a well-bred lady.
Yes,
And
you could do the smallest of stitch.
but everybody has to start somewhere.
Yeah. So there we go. We've got one of the triangles outlined. And you could continue filling this in by, just keeping going back and forth. You can go, all the way around like that, or you can go in straight lines all the way down. You can change directions at any time. And then if you are ready to change your color, you just flip over to the back. And you want to leave a good enough amount of thread here that you can make a knot. So don't just try to, snip off way down here. And also don't sew so far that you don't have any on the back. Make sure you leave some to tie your knot. So just snip that off. Any extra that's on your needle, you can just pull off and set aside. And then the good thing about halving the thread is that when you get to the end, there's a perfect way to tie them together because there's already 2 strands. And I just make a simple knot, pull them together and snip pretty close. And just toss those aside. So let's move on to another color. This is a really pretty rosy pink. Everyone should tell us which color they got in the chat.
Yes, please. And if you are, so we had the berry shade, we had the brights, which are kind of based on 2 of Jonathan Hils' pieces. And then we had the neutrals, which is based on, all of the color palettes were based on different pieces within the exhibition. So yeah, let us know which ones you are working on. And there should be 6 colors in your, regardless of colorway. And we did that because that should be enough for you to have a different color in each section of this pattern and not have any 2 colors touching, any of the same color touching itself, kind of like how we do with maps. So if you haven't, I can hold up some of our other color palettes. As Jen gets the next strands of thread of floss ready. So Susan has the neutral, which is, I'm doing the whole like Instagram influencer, like, can you see it? But this, can you see it? So we have these, we've kind of focused on more of our warm neutrals, which is very 2021. So ranging from an ecru, oh, thanks. An ecru here, all the way down to kind of this charcoal brown, or black brown, I think is the official color. These are all DMC embroidery flosses, which are kind of one of the leading companies in the embroidery world. And then the other kit is the brights. So for you, Becky, and I know Katie might not have a kit yet, but if you're thinking about one, the other colors, the brights, where the darkest color is a rich purple, and then our lightest color is this kind of lemony yellow. So we have.
Oh, Crystal got the neutrals too.
Some neutrals fans.
Yes.
All right. So those are your color options. Back to you, Jen.
Yay. Okay, so I'm ready with my pink. And on this one, let's do the stem stitch. I love this stitch. It really just adds some texture. So you'll start out pretty much the same way as the back stitch, just putting in one normal stitch. And then coming up a length away, just same as the back stitch. But instead of going into this spot, we're going to kind of move that stitch up a little bit and go into the middle underneath. Can everybody see that well enough? And then it just creates this little twist and gives it some texture. Come up again and go back under the middle. Just a little something extra.
So this is the stem stitch.
Yes. Very easy to do. And I'm just outlining these so that we can, kind of hit every step, but you can fill in, and I will show you my example where I really filled everything in when we get to the last step. Sometimes when I'm finishing this one at a corner, it can be kind of hard to determine what to do with that last bit. If it just doesn't look great, that one actually looks really good. So I'd probably just leave it, but you can always go back into that little end spot and just do a little like half baby one. Just so that way it doesn't look like just a random lone stitch. Looks like you started a half of it. I think it looks better that way. And then you kind of just start fresh when you turn, but you can kind of get up under that other stitch so it looks like it's going somewhere. And if your work gets twisted up, if your thread gets twisted up, you can kind of just pull it back through and let it come through slower. And then also make sure when you're sewing, if it gets really twisted up like that, you can just untwist it or let it go and let it fall, and it'll get untwisted, and makes it a little bit easier to pull through when it's not a twist. Uh-oh. Sometimes you get hung up on your hardware. It's harder to do this when you're looking at through a screen. There we go. Also, another problem that you can have, which I still have to this day, is you can snag this extra fabric and it'll get sewed through. So if that happens, you can go back through, or you can even just kind of snip into the fabric wherever it is, to get that unattached. But that's another reason why I kind of bunch up the fabric and kind of push it over, because also the oils on your hand can kind of darken the rim, which is not such a big deal when you're leaving it on the hoop. But if you were to take this off and put it in a frame or something like that, you could really see that rim spot there. So I always kind of hold the fabric over, and that's how I hold it, just so that way my thumb's not actually on the piece. And it also helps to wash your hands before you start, just so that way there's not a whole lot of excess oils to get onto the thread or the fabric, especially if you're working with bleached white, since it is so super white. Any little thing, any spills. But you know, the cool thing is if you spilt something on it, you just cover it up with a stitch.
Yeah, just it's extra, it's filigree.
Yeah. Yeah, with this
It's
one,
jazz. Now you're improvising.
yeah, you got to just get creative and go with the flow. And it's supposed to be fun and meditative. So don't take it too seriously, or it will not be fun and meditative.
I will say this is a great thing to do while you're watching whichever like favorite home improvement, or you know, the new marriage or mortgage show that apparently folks are watching on Netflix. Any sort of like soothing television where there's going to be a reveal at the end, so you're like, I can pay more attention to what's happening in my hands for a little bit. Embroidery.
Yeah, or you know, listen to a good podcast.
Yeah.
Or an audiobook.
It's also, and I will, even though I don't do this, I hear that in, you know, a long meeting where you are really just supposed to be on camera, you know, they can't see your hands. Maybe you do some stitching.
Yes, all about the audiobooks. Yeah, it gives you something to, you know, you're able to be creative while you're listening to that. And then when you're done, you have beautiful artwork for your wall, or you can give it as a gift. Most of the things that I make are not for me. They're for somebody else. So there we go. We got a stem stitch. I love that one. So we're ready to thread off again.
I do have a little question for you, Jen. For the stem stitch in particular, if you were wanting to do, say, a back and forth, and you didn't want to just keep outlining or you know, going around the edge until you'd filled in a shape, one of those parallelograms, not parallelograms, triangles, or whichever shape you're going for, one of the rhombuses, then would you, let's say that you were coming up over on the outside and coming under on the inside. So if you wanted to just go back the other way, would you just turn your hoop around, or would you just
I probably wouldn't turn the hoop around. I probably would just, I probably would just zigzag. I'd just start going the other way.
And would you try to keep, you know, whichever stitch is going over, would you keep that on the same side, like the orient?
Well, you can do it a few different ways. I've got an example here where I've got a few stitches going on. There's quite a lot of stitches going on in this one, but let me see where I've got a stem stitch one. this one.
The
Right
green one?
here, the green one, they're going the same direction. So when I came back, I came back down, like I started down here and I went up on the outside straight, and then I came back down, but I kept the thread going in on the exact same side. But I think there's another one where I didn't.
Because I know in one of the samples that I did, I alternated and it ended up kind of looking like a hair braid. Like I was going up on the outside, and then when I came back the other way, I didn't change the orientation to match, and so just gave a different texture.
Same, that's this one right here. It ends up looking like a braid when you're doing it kind of next to itself in the opposite direction. I did these with my own colors, so there's lots of variation there.
That was one of, so for those of you who didn't know, and I don't think many people did, Jen was the one who created this pattern as well. So all of the patterns that we're doing, this was our first, with our first exhibition this year, but all of the patterns that we're doing for the upcoming year correlate with one of the pieces in an exhibition. And and then we've got to, test the pattern. So Jen, being our most seasoned embroiderer, tested the pattern, and that's why you see so many different stitches, is because she was figuring out which ones would work for the kit that we put together. So obviously, if you are a more seasoned embroiderer, you can put in whatever stitches you like.
Yeah. If you know any more stitches than these, feel free to add your own.
Yeah. And we are for the next, oh, look at you, such a pro, doesn't even need a needle threader. But for our next kit, which I'll talk about as we wrap up here in a little bit, I say a little bit, nearly 20 minutes from now, but I'll give you the sneak peek, and we can talk about some of the upcoming stitches that we're going to be adding to our repertoire.
Yeah, well, so we'll build on the stitches learned from this kit. So this is kind of the introductory kit. All right, I think I'm going to do this section right here in the simple chain stitch, or it's also called the split stitch. It kind of looks like the chain stitch, but it's a little bit easier than the chain stitch. And you start the same way as the back stitch and come forward. But instead of going here like the back stitch or underneath like the stem stitch, you'll split the middle and just go into the middle of the stitch. And it kind of splits it up. And then you'll just keep doing that, splitting it. And it doesn't have to be perfect. If it's twisted, obviously you're not going to get the greatest split, but that's fine. You'll still get the effect. And I find on this one, the thicker that you make the threads, if you use like 3 or 4 strands instead of the 2 that I decided to pick, it looks a little bit better and thicker and more like the chain stitch, which is a little bit more complicated. This one's an easy way to get the similar effect. And instead of, you know, turning and making the outline of the square, kind of like we showed you on the other example, you can just turn and do another straight line of it right next to that line. And it adds even more to the kind of braided chain look when they're right next to each other. I love this green color. And you can also add more colors if you want. Like Laurel mentioned earlier, they're DMC thread colors. We've found that is the best brand of thread. I'm just going to finish that other one how I finished my other piece by just doing a little one on the end, so that way that last one kind of looks a little bit better. Okay, so now that we've shown all the stitches, I want to give enough time to kind of show you how to add the felt backing. Yours in the kit is already cut into a circle, but just in case you want to, you know, buy your own materials and do your own kit, I'll kind of show you how I cut out the felt and add the backing. So obviously yours is going to look much more finished than this. So we're going to go ahead and use my other example to finish. So we'll start by grabbing your piece of felt. And like I said, the one in your kit is already a circle. So I'm just going to quickly do this. And I'm going to have to take this off actually. No, I'm going to do this in the other one. Use your hoop. Well, actually, you can use it like that. Kind of fold your fabric in and use the outer rim and your pencil to just draw a line that you're going to cut out. And then take some bigger scissors than, you know, the little sewing snips. And you just start cutting around. And it doesn't have to be perfect. And it helps if it just is a little bit bigger than the hoop, because the threads or the stitches that you put in are going to cinch it in. And I'm just going to go ahead and use the other one now that you've seen that. So you'll need to trim some of your excess fabric to about an inch of fabric, or half an inch to an inch of fabric left on your all the way around in diameter. And it doesn't have to be perfect because you're not going to be able to see that thread. It will be covered up by the felt. you want it to look pretty, you can do that. You're just leaving enough to sew onto.
And of course, if you are giving this away as a gift and you want to let that somebody know that that 'twas you, you can always sign the felt backing. But I do suggest you do it in permanent marker and before you start sewing.
So then what you're going to do is cinch this around so it goes in. So you'll take, doesn't matter what color thread, but I tend to use a lighter one just in case you do end up able to see it through. And you'll want a pretty good length to be able to make it all the way around. And you'll want to start on the inside so that your little ending is on the inside. And then you're just going to make a very simple, easy running stitch, which just means in and out. And it can be very simple and messy, and it doesn't matter because it's really going to just cinch everything in. You're not going to see it. I may find it a little small, so it's kind of harder to grab onto.
And does it matter if this running stitch, if that's even or not?
No.
Good note. It's nice to have like the very last step be the most kind of loosey-goosey.
Yes. Yeah, because I mean, it's really just to pull all this fabric behind the work so that you don't see it from the front. So you're not going to see it. It's going to be covered by felt, which is great. So it doesn't have to be beautiful. That way you can spend more of your focus on the front. And it's quick and easy to finish your project. Yeah, don't be like me. Leave yourself a little bit more fabric to work with. I think I cut off a little bit too much. But that's okay. Again, this is the back. In all honesty, you could just cut it all off and not have the pretty backing. But we like to have it finished. And so you can already see that it's pulling it around to the back, even though we haven't even pulled it tight yet. Okay, when you get back to the beginning, just make sure to go through very close to that first stitch, just so you have the whole way around and you can pull it nice and tight. And I'm going to come back out. And then to tie off, what I like to do is just grab up a little bit of fabric and thread, leave the loop before you pull it all the way through, and then go back through that loop. And don't pick up the other fabric. There we go. And then pull it tight and it makes a little knot. And then go back into the inside, and that way your end is on the inside.
That's so much cleaner than what I've been doing, which is to leave a sizable length on the edge and then to tie those at the beginning to not knot it. So I go in with a loose and then I tie them together when I get back to the beginning, but then it's just not as clean. That's so much.
See, that's why we need the sew along to show all the little details that are hard to get into the packet. So then you're going to add this little guy. This is a little small. The ones in the first packet are just a tad small, but that's okay. We're going to have them bigger in the later packets. Again,
you might have gotten one of the ones that we did after we learned.
Okay, so you might have the bigger one.
Yeah, there's always a chance that you got that right.
Yeah, so here I've got one that was a bigger one. See, it went all the way to the edge. It went, because when I started cutting out this one, we used the outer edge of this, and then it'll cinch it in so that the end comes in and you won't see it on the outside, but you want it to be close to that outer rim, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, so that's okay if you got the smaller one. And pieces of felt are like 15 cents. If you want to get a fun color instead of the gray, if you want it to be super bright, and then you can see it from the front, kind of give your work a little bit of a colorful haze to come through. Very easy to customize what you get with the kit. You can always find ways to make it your own and be creative, add your own spin on it. I don't think anybody's two kits are going to look the same when they're done.
Certainly not. And also, if you are working on a kit now or you're planning to do one in the future, please, whenever you're finished in whatever form, snap a photo and either put it on our Facebook page or tag us on Instagram at No Way Contemporary so that we can share. We'll create a little gallery of craft kits or embroidery kits, because it'd just be so much fun to see how everybody is interpreting the same patterns or the same three colorways, just see all the different expressions of embroidery.
So, okay, we're ready to finish. You're going to start by coming up on the inside of the fabric, very close to the edge. If your piece is the larger size, and then come up into the edge of the felt so that it lays flat. And then just do a little bitty stitch right next to that So that way you're stitching the right direction to make it easier on yourself. You're not stitching down into it. So you just have this baby little stitch there to start. Whoops, shaking the camera there. And then you'll easily be able to push through both and move along. And this will just be a simple running stitch. Move over a little bit. Try to, if you want it to be super neat, just try to keep your distances that you go into the same length when you move over, and just always make sure you're picking up the felt piece and the fabric behind. And just keep doing that all the way around. If you run out of your piece of thread, you can just tie off the same way you tied off this is, you can also do the blanket stitch, yes. And then you'd have kind of a line around it. That would be very cute, yes. I just wanted to keep it simple for the beginners, but yes, that would be very cute to do the blanket stitch. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. I recently learned that the stained glass window at the Philbrook in the staircase, one of the glass panes was intentionally put in upside down because they didn't want to make it perfect.
That's truly a lesson for us all.
Yeah. Not striving for perfection, just self-expression. It's at the Philbrook in the staircase.
And the Philbrook is a museum in Tulsa. It was originally it was an oil magnate, right, who built it.
Yes.
And there's a Phil Cade, there's a Phil Tower. It was a big shot in Tulsa in the early oil boom. But
that's what it is.
Yes, and then the Philbrook is
it was originally their residence, their home, and then they donated it to the city after 11 years to be an art. It was an art center, but then it was later turned into a actual museum. So I'm going to finish off here just to be respectful of everybody's time. Same way I did earlier, where you just kind of go back through very close to where you were working. Leave that little bit, go back through that, and it makes a little knot. And then what I do to hide the tail is you can kind of just go underneath. And you're coming out a little bit. Oh, we're stuck around my, there we go. And if you just snip that off very closely and kind of inch it back a little bit, you hide that tail in it. And you go all the way around and it will eventually look like this. And you can't see any of that from the front, so. And there's our pretty logo that I embroidered.
the sample piece.
Yeah. So where is the, oh yeah, there we go. So I hope you guys enjoyed the sew along. It was really fun to kind of go through all the steps with you guys and answer any questions that you had. I hope you love your kit and finish up and share your pictures with us. And let us know if you have any other questions. You can always feel free to email us or Facebook us. We are so excited to present the new kit, which I will share Laurel's screen here so she can give you a little preview. We're still working on the
samples.
But we're really excited. It's based off one of the works from our newest show that opens on April 2nd. My soul looks back and wonder how I got over Skip Hill and Letitia Huckabee, and it will run through June 20th. So plenty of time to see that, plenty of time to get your kit during the show. And we will do another sew along with that kit on May 20th at 7. We'll be blasting that on Facebook. So don't feel like you have to write it down right now, but
yes,
if you want to mark your calendars, May 20th, 7 p.m.
We'd love to see you again.
Yes.
Also, I'll give you a little preview of the work that this is based on. So, Letitia Huckabee, her work is going to be focused as we approach the 100th remembrance of the Greenwood Massacre. Letitia's work is focusing on Greenwood in Tulsa and its namesake, Greenwood, Mississippi. So she has both. She's based out of Texas, but she has connections both to Greenwood, Mississippi and to Greenwood, Tulsa. And so we've taken this piece, which she uses both photography and vintage textiles and embroidery, which is, a fun thing for us to create work that is reflective of her artistic values and the subject matter. And so based off of that, we've come up with an embroidery kit that looks a little like this, quite different from Jonathan Hils' work, but that's part of what's really fun about embroidery kits. And we have some
colors.
Colorways.
Yay.
So this is we're calling it Prairie. It's the colorway that's based on the work of Letitia Huckabee, which is that piece is called A True Story. And so I'm working on that sample right now, and I can show you where I am thus far. Working on it. And then we have what we're calling the antique colorway, which has kind of that, our darkest color is this rich navy blue, and then up to our kind of ivory shade. So thinking a lot of Letitia's work with vintage fabrics and things like flour sacks and bed sheets and the linens that the people that she's worked with have as kind of, a legacy, but like your grandmother's sheets, you're not necessarily like bringing them out for company. And then
the inspiration for color.
Exactly. And then, so Skip Hill his work is more, it's collage based and has a lot more kind of that pop art colorway. So our last colorway is called Pop Art, which is based on a piece that he did about a beauty shop, which will be in the exhibition. And so that exhibition opens up next Friday. There's an artist reception if you're in Tulsa and want to attend from 5 to 7 p.m. on Saturday, April 3rd. And because of, with safety protocols in place, we have if you head to our Facebook page or our or 108contemporary.org, then you can register for a ticket to a free ticket to attend that kind of reception. It's more of just a meet and greet. And then we're going to have, of course, new work in the shop. We'll have by the artists here, we'll have new embroidery kits, and we'll also have the book that Skip Hill illustrated called Opal's Greenwood Oasis, which is about Greenwood before the massacre, and this thriving oasis for Black Oklahomans. So he did the illustrations for this book, and we'll have signed copies available for purchase. And all of those, the proceeds for that will go to Fulton Street Books, which is a Black-owned bookstore in North Tulsa. So yeah, a lot of exciting things coming up. And oh, the other fun thing about this upcoming embroidery kit is that we're going to be adding in some, in the spirit of reusing vintage fabrics, some applique. So Katie Leatherberry, you're going to get to do your blanket stitch on some fabric scraps that we are coordinating. That's, if you can see behind me, that's I've got this big box of scraps that we're going to be kind of matching them to the different colorways and giving you enough to create treetops, but make it applique. So, and we have some new stitches. It's going to be a good time. So thank you again. Thank you so much, Jen, for going through all of these steps. Thank you to all of our attendees for coming on this experiment with us. I hope that it was a worthwhile part of your Thursday night. So thanks, everybody. And we will see you when we see you.
Bye. Bye, everyone.